Hey everyone, this is John Heath here again for MiltonRose Learning with another Let's Learn lesson on the final offensive and armistice of World War I in 1918. Okay, so it's the end of the line here for World War I. So we're going to look at some of the context and causes of what caused that armistice to happen in the first place. We'll give you a really good chronology so you can throw that down into your notes and beef them up. We'll also look at a turning point as well in my mind about what kind of caused this this kind of final collapse at the end, and then we'll look at the impact and the significance of it so we can really put the World War I into context and the armistice. Okay, so first off then, what was driving this final offensive and the armistice at the end of the war? Well, first off, let's get our head in the zone here then. The exhaustion of the German army. They were absolutely, exhausted, they had nothing left to give. So the failed spring offensive, which was called Operation Michael, Germany's 1918 offensive cost over 230,000 casualties, stripping the army as well of its elite stormtrooper units, who were highly trained, in my opinion probably the most deadly troops in the war. And you can kind of see, for visual learners here, some stormtroopers. Thankfully we decimated them after the spring offensive, but they were very dangerous and they had highly advanced revolutionary tactics, so it was nice to take those off the battlefield. Also irreplaceable losses, so unlike the Allies, Germany had no fresh military manpower left. They'd scraped the barrel, there was nothing left to replace fallen frontline troops. So once your troops are kind of depleted, you're kind of living on borrowed time. Then number two, in terms of context, we have Allied unity and unified command. So the Allies had actually got their act together now. So General Foch was appointed. He's the guy looking at us in the image. Ferdinand Foch was appointed Supreme Allied Commander, coordinated British, French and American strategy. Okay, so unified command structure under Foch, which always helps. And the arrival of the AEF, the American Expeditionary Forces. So over 250,000 fresh American troops arrived monthly, boosting Allied morale and overwhelming German defences. The Americans who arrived were, yes, they were kind of trained and whatnot, but they weren't battle trained, not yet, but they were fresh. And so the difference between an American, what they call doughboy, and say a German soldier who'd been fighting for 4 years was massive. The American troops were fresh and they were ready to go into battle and to overwhelm the Germans. Then, lastly, I would say, German Revolution and mutiny, as you can see in the image there. So there was a naval mutiny at the North German port of Kiel. So German sailors refused orders to launch a final suicidal attack against the Royal Navy, and that triggered widespread revolt. They'd basically had enough, and they were just, forget this, and that was the fraying of German military discipline. And eventually the Kaiser Wilhelm II, he abdicates to Holland, and there's an armistice. So the newly formed German Republic signs the ceasefire at Compiègne, ending hostilities on 11th of November 1918. Okay, and the war comes to a close. So those are some of the context and causes that feed into this, but we need to get a bit more of a deeper read on what was happening. So we're going to lead you through a nice chronology here, and then we'll look at one of the key turning points in my mind. Okay, so the final offensive and armistice, let's have a look. So there we go. So 8th of August 1918, the Battle of Amiens, which has been called the Black Day by the German army. So this showed combined arms mastery. So General Haig unleashes 500 tanks, that's a lot in this period, 2,000 artillery pieces and aircraft in a surprise attack with no preliminary bombardment, which was again revolutionary. No artillery telling you where the attack's going to come, we're just going to go straight in. Led to a 7-mile advance, it bypassed German defences and captured 12,000 prisoners on the first day alone. So this was a very good piece of combined arms manoeuvre. Ludendorff's realisation, so Ludendorff, the German general obviously, famously called 8th of August the Black Day of the German Army. That's a really good quote to memorise, admitting that Germany now could no longer win. We've broken the Germans' back strategically. Then we have August to October 1918, we have the 100 Days Offensive. So rolling attacks. So Ferdinand Foch launches a series of coordinated Allied offensives across the entire Western Front. The Germans are reeling like on the ropes, and so we're going to give them that final kind of punch to kind of try and knock them out. Breaking the Hindenburg Line, so British, American and French forces smashed through Germany's strongest fortified defence system, which was the Hindenburg Line, at the St. Quentin Canal. Okay, so we are seriously pushing now against the Germans. And German retreat, so German forces were forced into a continuous westward retreat, losing all territory gained since 1914, which was incredibly symbolic because they're now back on Germany's borders. Okay, so it shows that we're pushing. And then October to November 1918 was the collapse of the Central Powers. So basically domino surrenders, I would say. Bulgaria goes in September, Ottoman Empire goes in October, Austria-Hungary goes in November. They all sign separate armistices, is that a word? But they all sign separate peace kind of agreements. Kiel mutiny on the 28th of October, so German sailors mutinied rather than launching that final suicidal attack, and it would have been suicide against the Royal Navy, and that triggered a revolution across Germany. Kaiser abdicates on the 9th of November of that year, abdicates his throne, and he flees to Holland, which is not very far, just over the border, but he flees to Holland, and a democratic German republic was declared. Okay, so there's a lot of things going on here. You can see it's very fast paced. And then at the end of this drama, okay, 11th of November 1918, the armistice is actually signed, and you can see in that image there. So the campaign wagon, it was signed on in Marshal Foch's railway carriage. The German delegates come together to sign the armistice. The conditions are extremely harsh. Germany was ordered to evacuate all occupied lands, surrender its navy and heavy armaments, and to accept Allied occupation of the Rhineland. So basically Germany is crippled here. They really, the French especially, wanted to go extremely harshly on Germany. The 11th hour, so at 11 a.m. on the 11th day of the 11th month, the guns on the Western Front fell silent. Finally. Okay, and you probably notice, on Armistice Sunday and whatnot, at 11 a.m, that's when we have the commemoration of the World War I soldiers who lost their lives. Okay. So yeah, there's a lot going on in this period, isn't there? There's a lot of different events, but I think what was the turning point in those events that I've just recounted to you? Well, I would say, in my mind, I think the Battle of Amiens is crucial. It proved that we'd learnt from the butchery of the Battle of the Somme and Verdun and all these horrendous battles. We'd learnt combined arms, tanks, artillery, air power, infantry could break through modern fortified defences when you use them all together. They work, and we still use combined arms now. It's a core principle in modern military theory. Psychological collapse as well, so crushed the military morale of German high command, convinced Ludendorff, who was running the show with Paul von Hindenburg, that defeat now is inevitable. We'd broken the will of the German army, and as you can see in the little kind of video, you can see why these combined arms tactics were coming together. And once you've broken the enemy's will to resist, as Karl von Clausewitz once taught, then you've kind of won the war, once the enemy doesn't want to fight back. So it was the start of the end. It triggered the unbroken 100-day Allied advance that ultimately brought World War I to its conclusion. Okay, so that for me is a big turning point here. Now then, that's all well and good, but what was the significance of these events that we've just recounted then? Well, we've got normally tertiary, secondary, and then the most important being the primary. So let's tease those out, because it's always good as a historian to tease out the significance of key events. So the final offensive and the armistice then, tertiary significance for me. It put the seeds of future conflict down. So the Germans very quickly created a stab in the back myth. German military leaders falsely claimed that the army was undefeated in the field, so we haven't lost, but it was betrayed by domestic politicians and socialists, okay, who kind of like stabbed us in the back, and that's why we lost the war. It also created a massive resentment to the Treaty of Versailles, the very severe armistice terms, most of which came from the French, it has to be said, and the subsequent treaty fueled deep political anger in interwar Germany, and as we know, it provided very fertile soil for the Nazis to play into those resentments and then eventually come to power. In terms of secondary significance then, I would say the collapse of the old European order. So there was a fall of empires. It caused the complete political collapse and downfall of 4 major monarchies. Germany went democratic, Weimar Germany eventually. Austria-Hungary disintegrated. Russia overthrew the Tsar and turned communist. And the Ottoman Empire turned into basically what's now known as Turkey. So it was the graveyard of empires, massively. And in Germany, the birth of the Weimar Republic. So the Kaiser abdicated and forced the creation of a very fragile democratic republic in Germany. It was very weak, but it was an experiment with democracy, wasn't it, in Germany? And then obviously Hitler ended that in 1933. And then in terms of primary significance, well, it's not very difficult to work out, I don't think, here. It was the defeat of the German military machine, wasn't it? So combined arms dominance, the 100 Days Offensive proved finally that artillery, tanks, air and infantry tactics could decisively break through modern defences, as you can kind of see here, with tanks and infantry working together in that principle of combined arms. It took us 4 years to train those combined arms principles, but nevertheless we got there in the end. And obviously, primary significance, it brought a ceasefire on Allied terms. The Germans were on their knees and it was just literally, you're going to sign whatever we tell you to sign. That was part of the problem. We dictated everything to them. But it ended at least 4 years of conflict on the 11th of November 1918, and it forced complete German capitulation and surrender. Oof, and there you go. It brought 4 very bloody years of conflict to a close. Now, hopefully that's been provided you with a primer to understand the end of World War I and how it kind of finished and why. So now you can obviously do your own independent research to build on that. Obviously, don't forget to hit the like, subscribe and tap the bell icon so you never miss another Let's Learn video again. We'll obviously be coming back with more historical kind of series on the channel, so please do keep your eyes peeled for that as well. And it just remains to say, it's always a pleasure. And hopefully you've enjoyed that. So take care and we'll see you soon.